will it be on?
If I can request before I begin for all of you please to take out your phones and take some notes if you don't mind while I talk, that would be great. Just take the notes, don't Snapchat or Instagram or later inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. No, not like that, not like that. I know it's been a long time. I know, alhamdulillah, yesterday was a very, very full day, mashallah. And I'd like to apologize, first of all, for those of you that I embarrassed on the volleyball courts last night. It's not kind of me, but I take no mercy on the volleyball courts, inshallah. Secondly is, alhamdulillah, yesterday was, mashallah, a very spiritually sound day. It's important that all of you understand the balance of Islam. And I felt like yesterday was a good snapshot of the balance of Islam. That you can have and find spirituality, of course, in a lecture and salat. At the same time, you can also find spirituality in building a tower with newspaper as well. And it's important that we understand that when Islam talks about a way of life, it's not just on the musalla and the mihrab. A way of life can be found in any activity that you do, so long as you are God conscious in that activity. And so yesterday I found, and this is of course a tribute to the organizers who did a fantastic job of thinking about every aspect of the day yesterday, and also a tribute to all of you who I thought really you were invested into the day. All of you, I've never seen so much excitement about newspaper and tape in my life, but alhamdulillah, it was very well done. I know that it was a tiring day for all of you. I equally am tired as well. It's tough beating you guys in sports, you know. It's weary on the body, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This discussion I have planned for this morning is a very important one. So inshallah, if you've had your breakfast, then I need your ears and your attention, inshallah, with me. Mutahar said 50 minutes. That's a little bit long for all of you. I think 45 tops, inshallah, we'll do. By 11:45, inshallah, we'll be done. And then, of course, the floor will be open for Q&A. We do have 3 questions, just like yesterday, for each group, inshallah. The verse that I read for you in the khutbah is a very famous verse from Surah Ali Imran. It talks about the philosophy of tribalism in Islam. What is probably known as the gang mentality in today's day and age. And I really want my parents to understand that this philosophy is an Islamic philosophy. And the ayat reads this, that Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind. And you should know, and you do know, alhamdulillah. Those of you who have attended my lectures, you know that I make this point whenever this portion of the verse comes about, that sometimes the Quran speaks to a certain group of people. Sometimes the Quran speaks to all of mankind. There are moments where it says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O those who believe. In that verse, the kuffar, munafiqeen, mushrikeen are not the mukhatib, are not the intended audience. Sometimes the Quran says, Ya ahle kitab, for example, the Christians and the Jews. And sometimes it says, Ya ayyuhan nas, or Ya bani adama, meaning sons of Adam. And here, of course, the Quran talks about all of mankind. In there, of course, there are those who believe in Allah and those who deny Allah. There are those who are the mushriks and the kuffar, those who are the mu'mineen, the believers. And usually in the study of ulum al-Quran, they say that when the verse begins like that, ayyuhan nas, it is a general explanation of a phenomenon that affects everybody regardless of your deen and regardless of your faith. So it is what's called a fitri discussion. It's an innate discussion. Doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or non-Muslim, this is innate inside of you. And the ayat goes on to say that surely we have created you from man and woman, and we placed you. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلًا. We are the ones, Allah says, we are the ones that placed you in tribes and nations. For what purpose? لِتَعَارَفُوا. So you can know each other, understand each other, have tolerance towards each other. So in this attempt that Islam is, breaking down walls and breaking down barriers, that was the attempt of the deen of Islam, the attempt of the Holy Prophet as well, when he accepted the ashab from all walks of life, be it the African slave of Bilal, or the Persian companion of Salman, or even some European non-Muslim companions as well. So sometimes it's quite ironic when we see the Black Lives movement, or we see the other movement as well that attempts to either break down walls or give each group its due respect. It's a very Islamic approach. That Islam has said that this is not made for a certain culture or a language or a part of the world. Right? The deen is a fitri deen, innate deen for everybody of all colors and all walks of life. So God says, we are the ones that placed you in these nations so you can know each other. But the criteria by judging each other is not color or status or money or the color of your passport. It says what? Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The only force factor that is any worthy of praise in the eyes of Allah, indallah, in the eyes of Allah, is piety. Is piety, is to be pious. Meaning the color that only Allah sees is the color of piety. The language Allah sees, the language of piety. This year, I had, alhamdulillah, the sharaf of going to Hajj for the first time. I've never been to Saudi before. First time I went for Hajj this year. Thank you very much. That's a good cup, man. Thank you, my brother. I appreciate that. And many people ask me, how was it, and how did you feel, and what did you take away from that? And the one thing that I constantly tell people about my Hajj experience is that it broke me down. They call Hajj the vanishing of the human being, because you literally vanish in a sea of humans. And at that moment, it doesn't matter if you have perfect English, or your passport is blue, or you're born in a certain country. You're wearing 2 pieces of towels on your body, and you're walking beside a person who could be a slave in their country, could be a worker in their country, or could be the CEO of a huge company in their country. But they're begging to Allah just like you're begging to Allah. And those of you who have been to Hajj, you know there's a moment where you spend one night in Muzdalifah, which is an open desert, and literally the one image that will never ever leave my mind is that watching individuals wearing 2 pieces of towels, scratching the ground looking for pebbles, looking for rocks. And they have their little bag, and they're putting rocks inside of a bag. I mean, is there anything that's more nothingness than that? You're on your hands and knees, scratching, and you're throwing garbage, and you're throwing all sorts of stuff, litter away, looking for pebbles, looking, is it the right size? No, it's too big, it's too small, too flat, throw it away. And here is a man counting his pebbles. And afterwards, now they're sitting around, this could be the rich, I mean, we had people in our group who are multi-millionaires in our group. And they're right beside me, and they're counting their pebbles for Jamarat. 1, 2, 3, 4. They would ask me, Syed, is this a good pebble? I go, yeah, that's a good pebble. And you literally vanish in this sea of humanity. And for a moment, we talk about the idea of عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. This is what that image is. Right? There was a huge qafla from Africa doing tawaf with me. Huge Malaysian qafla, huge Indonesian qafla. Huge Pakistani qafla. Arabs were everywhere. All you saw was, but yet they were all, this idea of one color doing tawaf of the Kaaba. And I remember one individual gave me some beautiful advice. He said, after you're done your tawaf, because in tawaf you don't see the beauty of it. You're just trying to make sure you don't lose your patience during tawaf. He says, go up to the 3rd floor and look at it from there. And it's beautiful, literally. And if you look at the Kaaba, you focus on it, you can just see the sea of humanity going around the Kaaba. And in there you don't see Amir and Gharib, you don't see Faqir, you don't see, no. So this verse is talking about the idea that we placed you in tribes and nations. Okay. So we understand right away the idea of the tribalism of Islam. Please follow me in this discussion. Is something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's fitri for us to be drawn towards those who talk like us, walk like us, same color as us, eat like us, smell like us, have the same, everything like us. That's natural. The example I give often is that my time in Qom, when I landed in Qom, the first thing they taught me was Farsi, of course. You go to a linguistic school, you spend 7-8 months there, you learn Farsi, how to read, how to write, how to talk, how to everything of Farsi. And in that school, there was 90 plus countries that were represented. Non-Iranians, of course. And I specifically remember in my class, and they did this on purpose, they would break up the countries, so they made sure there weren't too many Canadians or Americans in one class, because we would start, we'd actually teach you to start English after a while, right? So they make sure there was 1 or 2 max of each country inside each classroom. We had 12 people inside of our classroom. So there's a Chinese guy beside me, a Brazilian brother beside me, an Arab beside me, a Pakistani beside me, a Kashmiri beside me. And when it came time for a little break in between the classes, we would go downstairs. There's a little store, little they call it canteen there, right? You go downstairs, and literally you would see people come down the stairs, and the first people they will look for are their fellow countrymen. So the first person I would look for, is Sheikh Salim or Sheikh Osama, and I would run and we would kind of, huddle together for 10 minutes, talk in English. It would drive them crazy. Don't talk English, talk Farsi. But and you would see the Pakistanis in one corner, the Arabs in one corner, and that becomes a fitri thing. It's very natural to do that. And it boils down to a process or a concept in psychology called the belongingness. The fitri innate need to belong to something. To belong to something. And sometimes it's such a powerful need inside of us, it blocks our judgments. And many of you belong to groups that you know are bad for you, are not good for you, bring out the worst in you. And it could be a WhatsApp group, it could be a group that you hang out with on Fridays, it could be, whatever the case may be. But the fact is that, look, I know Moulana, these guys aren't good, these guys promote this, promote that, it's haram, but I belong to that group. Understand the point very well, please. I belong to that group. And if you're asking me to leave this group and this circle because they're bad news for me, I don't want to do that because I'll be ostracized, isolated. I will no longer belong to a group. And this fitri need to belong to something, this shu'uban wa qaba'ila, won't be fulfilled. And that brings about all sorts of issues. Self-esteem and self-worth we talked about, and self-image we talked about yesterday. Sometimes, unfortunately, we rely on others to give us our own worth and our own image. And so it's such a powerful need for us to belong to something that it blocks our judgment or actually forces us to quiet the conscious inside of us. And say, I know what these guys are doing is wrong, but they do, once in a while, they do good things as well. So it's okay, you know. We're all sinners, no one's ma'soom, you know, who am I to judge, blah, blah, blah. Right? And so we'll allow people to influence us, stain us sometimes, all because we belong to this group. Now, what does that come about in terms of the family? And to my parents, it's really, really important that you understand all of this. That this also exists inside of your child, naturally. And the first place that the child looks for to belong to something is the family unit. Now, belongingness doesn't mean that they share your last name, or you have your own room, or they make you a meal. The idea of belongingness is the fact that they're acknowledged inside of their own home. Please follow me carefully. Because inside the need for belongingness is the need for acknowledgement as well. I want you to imagine, examples I've given before, I want you to imagine that you know, somebody walks into a room and you're sitting there with 5 of your friends or 5 of your cousins, okay? And this person walks up and mashallah, every single person he says salam to, and he skips over you and says salam to the guy beside you. Almost as if you weren't there. For a moment you will think, whoa, like maybe he didn't see me, but then it happens a second time, a third time. And you feel like you're invisible to him. You weren't even acknowledged. Why is it the idea that salamun alaykum is such an important aspect of the greeting of Islam, where to the point where the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he would make it a point to be the very first one to greet. And so as you've heard that people will try to be the first one, but he would always beat them, blah, blah, blah. There's a reason for that. That greeting, the beautiful greeting of Islam, is the fact that with the greeting now, I'm acknowledging your presence. I'm acknowledging your presence. And there's whole adab and etiquette and sunnah of how to greet, you know. You shake the person's hand, you look into the eye, assalamu alaikum, how are you? You don't let go, nice warm handshake, right? Not like, you know, you guys, that's not a handshake. Nice warm handshake, you know, make it feel like at this moment now, nobody else matters but you. The Prophet of Allah, when somebody would speak to them and he was on their left or right, he would physically turn his body to speak to the person. He would never speak to the person as the guy is in his peripheral or behind him or let's say somewhere else. He would stop what he's doing and physically turn. And this physical turn is so important that for that moment he's saying, look, you are the only one that matters to me right now. And all this comes down to the need for what? Acknowledgement. Acknowledgement. Right? The biggest problems that sometimes we find inside of our homes is the fact that some of our children actually complain to people like me to say, Moulana, I'm invisible in my house. No one listens to me. I try to get a word in edgewise, and someone cuts me off. I try to give my opinion on what we should do, where we should go, and I'm like, no, chill. You're quiet. And for that moment now, fine, he's 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, whatever the case may be, but for that moment now, you've destroyed the need for acknowledgement inside of him. That happens enough times, he feels invisible. When he feels invisible, he won't belong to the family unit. And the moment that he feels like he doesn't belong to the family unit, he'll go outside and search for groups and groups and groups, and any group that will accept him, acknowledge him, make him feel like he belongs, he'll jump right in. And that's the whole gang mentality of today. These gangs are what? These gangs are out there committing crimes, robbing banks. When you ask a gang member, you know what? These guys are my brothers. These guys are my, if I need anybody, I need them. And they're there for me the moment I ask them. Yeah, we do this. Yeah, I know, I'm not naive. I know that we do wrong. But the overall is that I belong to this group. Even back in the Holy Prophet's time, the one thing that he used brilliantly was this tribal mentality. Because back then you belonged to a tribe, that was who your tribe was. You lived by the tribe, you died by the tribe, right? We ride together, we die together, as you guys would say. And it didn't matter if it didn't make sense to you what the tribe did. That was my tribe. If you killed anybody as part of their tribe, the entire tribe would avenge that death. If you married somebody in that tribe, the entire tribe would come towards you. Right? One philosophy why the Prophet married so many wives and why he married certain people was to bring the tribe towards Islam. And it would happen. He would marry a daughter from a certain tribe and the entire tribe would accept the deen of Islam. So that was back then in the era of Jahiliyyah, but it's so fitrally innate in need inside of you that it exists. And that exists in every single person inside of our home as well. And that's why when you look at this hadith by Imam Jafri as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, talking about this very famous 7-year breakdown of raising your child. And I know there's been 1,000 discussions on this hadith. And the portion I'm going to focus on is the last 7 years. When the hadith says that he is or she is your wazir, she is your advisor. And that might sound weird for my immigrant parents. That we're going to take advice from a 14-year-old? Yeah, you are. I'm a 15-year-old. It's funny how when a sister turns baligha at the age of 9, Allah holds her responsible for her actions. He says, you do whatever you can before 9, you're not responsible for that. Yes, it's good, develop your habits. You know, we have hadith that says when the person turns 7, for the parents, force them, encourage them, push them towards the musalla. But mom, it's not wajib, I'm not baligh yet. Classic reply. And she's right, she's not baligh yet. But what you're doing is that you're developing this habit and this culture of salat, such that when she does turn 9 and it is wajib, it's an easy transition towards salat. At the age of 9, at the age of 10, when she becomes truly baligha, at that moment Allah says you are a mukallif. You are a responsible individual. And I will what? I will judge you and you will be held accountable for your decisions at the age of 10. At the age of 10. You ask the mothers, what the bachi hai Moulana? She is in your eyes. She'll always be your bachi. In the eyes of Allah, she's somebody else. Which means what? Her creator is telling you she has potential inside of her that you haven't tapped into yet. And at the age of 15 for the brother, same idea. 15, 16, not fine. We have jismi bulugh, we have zahni bulugh. MashaAllah, there are men who are in their 50s who haven't yet reached that mental bulugh yet, MashaAllah. Right, sisters? Yes, MashaAllah. Yeah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You have no idea, Moulana, you have no idea. But basically at that moment, what this hadith is asking us to do as parents is that at the age of 15 and 16, inject them with a sense of belongingness. Meaning what? And I'll give you a very simple example. If you have a child in that age bracket who's now older than 15 or 16, and you have younger kids who are less than 15, I know there's some of you like this in this room. If, for example, this is a very simple example, you decide to take a family trip. Ziyarah, let's say to Iraq, or let's say you decide to go somewhere else, India, Pakistan, wherever you need to go, South Africa, mashallah, Cape Town, alhamdulillah, then you decide to take your kids with you, and you and your spouse are having a meeting, let's say, a discussion about when to go, and how many days to go. Include your child in that meeting. So you, your spouse, and your 15 or 16-year-old son or daughter. Not the other ones. And make it a point to tell them, look, you're in this meeting because, mashallah, now you're older now, and you're wiser now. You're not like your younger siblings. Those guys are kids. You now are somebody who is, mashallah, mature. And then at that moment, right away, they feel like they belong inside the family unit, number one. Number two, give them responsibility. Tell them, look, these are my dates. I want to fly, let's say, this airline, Emirates. Go and look for the best flight possible. Moulana, he doesn't know where to go. Just trust me, he'll blow you away with what he can do. He'll probably create an app by the time the afternoon hits, and you're already off here. Give them that responsibility. Say, look, you are in charge of flights. Give me a good flight, arrive in good time, you know, the stayover is not too late, blah, 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 and come back to me with 3 or 4 options. And their eyes will light up. Don't give responsibility to younger ones. Make it a point that you are different now in our eyes than your younger siblings are. Acknowledgement, belongingness. They're part of the tribe now. They're part of the tribe now. And the moment that they feel like I belong in the home, then they will not search outside for that need, that fitri need for a tribe to belong to. If that means that you give them some responsibilities and let them kind of falter and slip and fall and be there for them, right? But let them figure things out. All I want you to do is give them, empower them. Let them feel like my parents trust me with this. I don't want to mess this up. But even if I do mess this up, my parents are there to kind of save the day. And that's okay. And you teach them as they go. But the idea is to give them the sense of belonging. It's an innate need inside every single human being to belong to something. Right? Mental disorders, suicide, all these things come from this idea that they were very isolated when they were younger, or they're very alone today. Right? The Holy Prophet has a very interesting hadith. He says what? He goes, if you feel the need to constantly be alone and away from the masses, there's something not right in your mental state. We are social creatures. We require social interaction. We require to be around people. I get it, a week, 2 weeks, just leave me alone. I don't want to go here, I don't want to go there. You know, I just want to kind of be alone. But after a while, you need that social atmosphere. You know, one thing that we want to accomplish in this weekend was this social, mashallah, alhamdulillah, we've accomplished it, alhamdulillah. Right? Just to be with people, to talk to people, to interact with people is huge for your own mentality, your own psyche. When the child doesn't get that inside the home, then believe me, he'll search outside the home. And that's when faults happen. Because that's when I said the veil is there and they're not able to see, is this group right for me or wrong for me? All they see is, you know what? They accept me, they don't judge me, they don't hammer me, they don't make me feel like I'm insufficient. You know, I impress them, they like me, and they're there for me, and I belong to them. Yeah, they have a filthy mouth. Yeah, they like Jay-Z, for example. But who cares? They're my brothers. They're my sisters. We need to foster that inside of our home. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So moving forward, I know that some of you, mashallah, travel. You've been to trips in the recent times. I want you to now start giving responsibilities to your older children. And remind them, make it a point that, look, we are trusting you with this, okay? If they do mess up, if they do end up, you know, faulting, don't like make them feel like, oh my God, you know, the hellfire. No, it's not like that. So, you know, let them have growing pains. Okay. On top of that, point number 2 that I wanted to make very quickly was, before that, wallah salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If that can happen inside of our communities as well, that would be very, very important. Now I know, granted, a lot of my parents will come to me probably during lunch and say, you know what, we do that, but our child doesn't want to take that responsibility. Doesn't want that pressure. We try to give him, we try to empower him, but he rejects it. And that's the common complaint that I hear from the elders in our communities across North America, is that we're waiting to pass over the baton to the youth, but they're not reaching out their hands to take it. And of course, that's, you know, that's the effect of this millennial generation that believes in a very simple equation. And the equation is that ease equals value. I've talked about this at Beit al-Qaim several times. Ease equals value. This millennial generation that drives our parents crazy, by the way, is that ease equals value. If it's easy, it's valuable. If it's hard, it has no value. If the course is difficult halfway through, drop the course, man. Don't worry about it. Graduate in 5 years, it's okay. If the job is stressing you out, if 3 months in, quit. You know how many revolving doors we see in this generation? Every 6 months, some young guy, 20 years, has another job. I go, what happened, bro? You just got it. No, it wasn't for me. Because some manager called him out, let's say. And I'm sorry to say, sometimes our marriages, you young guys, mashallah, you fall in love, right? No, mama, baba, I have to marry him. I love him, baba. He's the one, baba. I have to. You fine. Fight the whole khandan. Fight the whole, get nani on your side. Get dadi on your side. Somehow get the nikah done. Get married. Okay, it's done, fine. 6 months later, talaq. What happened? Divorce. What happened? Ease equals value. It was too hard, Moulana. Marriage is too hard. It's not for me. And the deen is not ease equals value. Our generation of our parents was not ease equals value. They were struggle equals success. Struggle equals success. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وابتغوا إليه الوسيلة وجاهدوا في سبيله لعلكم تفلحون. O you who believe, the mu'mineen, you mashallah, 3 things will get you successful. Ittaqullah, taqwa, God consciousness. Wabtaghul ilayhi al-wasila. Seek Allah through a wasila, through a secondary source, and struggle on His path. Struggle on His path. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. You'll be included amongst those who are successful. Right? I mention this over and over and over again. The deen of Islam is a process-driven religion, not a result-driven religion. The process is struggle, sweat, try hard. You can stand in front of Allah on the day of judgment. Allah, wallahi, I did my best. Not that the moment things got a little bit difficult, I bolted. I dropped the course, I divorced the girl, I quit the job. Because it requires a little bit of effort and sweat from me. So on one flip side, I think a lot of my parents are waiting for their 16-year-old to come and take some things off of the shoulders of their father. Our elders in our community are waiting for their youth to come and overtake these things. They're tired, they've done their part. They've been here for 40 years. They put up these 4 walls. Now here are the keys, Baba, go. Take it towards, come on, inshallah. They're like, no, we don't have time. Or no, we don't want to do this, too hard. But somehow our parents did it. Somehow they worked, mashallah, 3 jobs and raised kids. Somehow our elders did all that. They ran their own family, they ran their own centers. And with that ethic or that culture of struggle just isn't inside this generation just yet. Because ease equals value, right? They want the impact without the struggle. They want the impact without the struggle. Like Shaykh Mutahari talks about the idea, and the example I always give is the mountain, right? So I want you to imagine there is an individual from your generation, from our elders in front of that mountain, and the youth of today in front of that same mountain. And the idea is to climb the mountain. The first thing that the elders will look at when they say go climb the mountain is, where's my first step on the mountain? Please follow me and then we'll wrap up. The first thing that the millennial will see is the top of the mountain. It's a very important point, Ya Allah. The first thing that our elders will see, that generation, called baby boomers, who came in the 70s and the 80s, and God knows how you did what you did, how you raised 4 kids, how you created a community, how you did all that, my salams to you. You did what we could never do. The first thing they'll look at is, where's my first step on the mountain? The first thing you guys will look at is the summit, the top of the mountain. And Shaheed Mutahari says that the reason for that is because this new generation is all about maximum impact. And they know the impact is the top of the mountain. I'm gonna go up there, I'm gonna plant my flag, take a selfie, and climb back down. And put it on Facebook, that's right. And Shaheed says that while that's very, very inspiring, the problem is that while the youth is looking at the top of the mountain, they don't see the mountain itself. They don't see the mountain itself. And they don't understand that to get to the top of the mountain, maximum impact is a very monotonous, repetitive, slow climb up the mountain. And meanwhile, all my parents are looking at is, this is my first step, this is my second step, this is my third step, this is my fourth step. And you're like, how am I going to get up there? And you're trying to figure out, is there somewhere I can be airdropped somehow on top of the mountain? Is there a belay system? Can somebody just kind of zip me up there? Can I zip line myself? And meanwhile, they're already up halfway up the mountain. It's the whole world view they have right now. So on one side, I get the idea that they want to belong, and they want to be given responsibility. At the same time, you have to take that responsibility and become those people that you complained about just last year. The very famous letter of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam to Malik Ashtar about governing people. He says, remind yourself that you're now in a position, Malik, where you were critical of that position just last year, just 2 years ago. A lot of my youth have this whole list of complaints about how the center should be run. Won't you? Yeah. This should happen, that should happen, you know, the bathroom should be cleaner, the shoe area should be nicer, blah, 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 this and that. That's fantastic. And you ask them to come on board and help out, I can't do it. Ease equals value. So we'll leave all of that to our elders who are in their 60s and their 50s, who should be retiring right now, you know, on the beach in Hawaii. But they're not. They're sitting here, Bachana. Because they have to. Who else will do it? The same idea in the home. When the father is 50, 60, it should be the point where he shouldn't worry about, you know, cutting the grass, and shouldn't worry about paying the bills. You should be out there with a part-time job, with all due respect, helping out with the finances. You know, going down to Costco and getting the groceries once in a while, God forbid. You consume half of it, but you don't refill it. These are things that we need to. So the sense of belongingness is give and take. They'll give you the keys that you belong, but you also have to have this sense of belonging as well. Be visible in the home. Be involved in the home. If Saturday morning breakfast is a family thing, get in there and start to cut the onions and toast the bread and scramble the eggs. Let them feel like you want to belong, and you must feel like you belong from them as well, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I'll tell you, because when it comes to this idea of the tribalism inside of you, Shaitan's tool is that, like I said, he blinds you. And I'll say it for the third time. Sometimes we know the group that I belong to is bad for me. It brings out the worst in me. I've seen youth in different communities. Wallahi, I've seen them. That when they're by themselves, oh my God, they're gems. They're gems. You sit down and you talk to them, you have a beautiful conversation. But when you see them around certain other people, oh my God, you can't recognize them. Their walk changes, their talk changes, their clothes change, everything changes. And almost as if they look at me and say, what can I do, Moulana? This is my tribe. This is my group. They make me feel like I belong. Inside of our communities and inside of our homes, if we don't do that as elders, make them feel like they belong, they'll go elsewhere. If that means that we don't judge our youth. You know, think about the fact that, you know, you're sitting in the Muharram Majlis and some kid walks in, let's say, for example. My last point, I know I said it 3 times already, I'm sorry. A kid walks into the hall, let's say, you know, ajib bal, mashallah, long hairs, maybe an earring, let's say, some tight jeans, a rips, let's say, here and there, I don't know, some sort of a dog on the shirt. He walks in 8th Muharram. And all eyes on him. You don't think he feels that? He feels that. And yet he walked in through this door to sit on the farsh of Imam Hussain. And that was perhaps a moment that he said to himself, you know what? I've tried everything in this dunya to somehow solve my problems. I went to drugs, I went to alcohol, I went to women, I went to gangs, I went to crime, I went to everything. Nothing worked. Somebody told me, try Muharram. And I walked in on the 8th of Muharram. And I sat down feeling already like I know I don't belong here. He comes once a year. And we're classic labels, right? We label everybody. 10 din ki Shia hai, Ashura ki Shia hai, this and that, 10-day Shias, Ashura Shia, oh ho 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 ho, look who's here. Those kind of things, right? And a person already has some apprehension walking into the center. Now they feel this heat of everyone staring at him because he doesn't fit the norm. And I'm not condoning that. I'm not saying to come in, dress like whatever. You should have respect for where you enter. Yes, no doubt. But think about the fact that maybe this was his last hope. His last hope, his faint connection to Islam was Imam Hussein's majlis. And some comment I made, some look I gave him, somehow nobody came and even said salam to him, acknowledged him. That, brother, I don't see you here. Are you new here? Where are you from? Where have you been? How are things? How can we help you? Nothing. He walks in and he walks out within 15, 20 minutes. And the faint line has disappeared. One small story at Tamasidua. There was a student in the Hawza in Qum. True story, by the way. And he went to his teacher, he says, Ustad, I want to study in the Hawza in Najaf now. He says, no problem. He says, go ahead. It's a life of a student, right? Of the Hawza. I mean, it's not a very luxurious life at all, right? I mean, student life is very difficult. It's you and your books, basically. That's all you have. So he takes his books and he attaches himself to a qafala, caravan that's going towards Najaf. Now back then, what was very common is that thieves would wait for caravans to come towards Najaf and loot them and rob them of their belongings. So this qafala makes its way towards Najaf, and halfway through the journey, they decide to stop over one night on the outskirts of Najaf, and they pitch up their tents, they pitch up their stuff, and they decide to sleep over on that ground for one night. And just like, lo and behold, robbers approach, and they say, look, give us all of your goods, put them in the middle here. This young student takes what he has, meaning his books, puts them in the middle. When the robbers are done robbing them, the young man comes to the head robber and says, look, in this pile of goods are my books. They have no value to you whatsoever, but they're everything to me. They're ripped and they're torn. I wrote in them. There's notes in there for me. Just give me my books back. The robber says, do you see that small hill in the distance? There's a light there. He goes, yes. He goes, go there. He goes, my boss is sitting on that hill. If he says that you can have the books, you can have the books. He goes to the hill. The boss, the godfather of the entire empire that loots qafilas coming into Najaf, is what? Is praying namaz shab. And this young man is sitting there waiting for him to finish praying. And then he says to him that, look, I've heard that you're the boss of this entire empire. I just want my books back. He summons one of his employees to give him his books back. As he goes and takes his books, the young guy turns around and says to this boss guy that, look, can I ask you a question? You're the head of this entire empire. You loot people who are going towards Najaf. You rob them of their belongings. He goes, yes, I do. But yet you were praying as well just now. And in the middle of the night, he goes, yes. He goes, what were you praying? This is my Salatul Layl. I was praying. He said, something's not right. You're the head of the empire that robs people of their belongings, and yet you're praying namaz al-sham. And he says, it's my faint connection to Allah. It's the one thing I do. And we do that a lot, by the way. Some of us do. We think that, if I can do this one act, it'll justify me doing all these bad acts. Right? At least I do this, they say, Moulana, right? At least I do this. Some don't even do this. Right? So inside of us, we justify this. Story goes on to say, the student reaches Najaf, gets to the Dari of Amir al-Mu'mineen, sends his salams. In his ear, he hears a person, what? Crying out loud, begging Amir al-Mu'mineen for something, for some hajat. He looks around the corner of Dari, and lo and behold, the boss of this empire was sitting there on his hands and knees begging Amir al-Mu'mineen for something. The young man approaches him. The young student says, do you recognize me? He says, no, I don't. He says, I was the one that asked for my books. You gave my books. He says, yes. He goes, what are you doing here? He said, no one has ever asked me the way you asked me. And why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And the faint connection that I had became a solid connection after a while. And now I'm begging Amir al-Mu'mineen to somehow get me forgiven in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't know sometimes who comes with what niyat into our communities, into our homes even. But we do know that they come with some ummid and some hope, be it the faintest of connections. You see the guy for 1-2 hours a year. But God forbid our actions, our comments, our stares, our lack of acknowledgement converts that faint whisper or faint connection into a zero connection. On the other side, can you imagine if he walks in and he gets swarmed, he gets tea served to him, he asks him, what's your story, how are you, how many siblings, where are you from, blah, blah, blah. Now he feels like, oh my God, you know what? I can belong to this community. They're not judging me based on the length of my hair, or holes in my ears, or the dog on my shirt, or the fact that I wore red on Shabi Ashur. God forbid. No. So now the faint connection becomes solid. And that's what we need. We need to, with our children and our youth in our community, is to create this idea that they belong and acknowledge their presence, provided all of you accept that acknowledgement. Understand the zahmat and the mehnat and the effort of your parents and the elders in our community as well. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, to accept our ibadah, inshallah, and to forgive our sins and sins of our parents, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give us that tawfiq, to choose our tribes properly. Remember, the tribe that you belong to, the group that you belong to is a complete reflection of who you are and how you see yourself. So we ask you, Allah, please give us, inject us in a circle of influence, in a tribe, in a gang, in a group that will reflect us in a good light in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, protect our families and build them towards the zuhur of Imam Zamana, inshallah. And finally, Allah, our dua is always one, that in our lifetime while we are alive in this world, we witness the arrival of our Imam, inshallah, and we become his ashab when he comes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right, please go into your team circles. What time? Let's speak up a little bit.
Yeah, we're okay. So sorry, there's one question that we have from the floor, please. Sure. Yeah, give that one.
Yeah, one question here.
Quick question.
Sorry, sisters, can we just for a moment, this might be a question that might be relevant to you as well, please. Thank you. Thank you, sisters, thank you.
We all are aware of, obviously, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. But there's times where God refers to himself as we, like we created you, and placed you in tribes and nations. So can you just explain why God refers to himself as we at times?
Sure, it's a great question. So the entire discussion on pronouns in the Quran and how Allah refers to himself sometimes as we or he or I has a beautiful discussion that requires an entire ashra. But it's not uncommon that sometimes when you have governments or you have powers or you have groups that even though one person might be doing the job, they say we. And that refers to the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thank you. The question was that why does Allah sometimes refer to himself as we in the Quran when obviously it's him doing everything. So for example, you know, let's say for example the president of a country signs a bill, and in his remarks he'll say that, you know, we signed this bill today into law, let's say for example, even though he was the one that signed the bill. Or let's say we have, you know, some kingdom or some queen or some king refer to themselves as, you know, we are, you know, the leaders of this country, even though she is or he is, for example. So it refers to a government or a power or a system that he belongs to. So when he says we, he refers to the idea that I am in my own entity the governing factor of this world. So it is a fact that he's referring to his own power, his own authority almost, right? Then there are moments where he uses I. And I, some of the Mufassirin have said that I refers to this very loving relationship between him and his creation. For example, he'll say that, you know, when, to the Holy Prophet, when my creations ask about me, tell them, فَإِنِّي قَرِيب, I am near. He doesn't say we are near, he says I am near. Right? At that moment, the I pronoun refers to this loving nature that he has, that no one else is there, I am there with you. But we, however, refers to some sort of a power, a legislation, a law, a command that comes from Allah. It's one, no doubt, but it's a powerful entity, inshallah. Yeah.
Forgive me, brother. When you are talking about drugs, about liquor, why do you mention women? Women are our mother. They are blessing to us. Why you take in the level of the drugs and liquor and all bad things?
The intent, no problem. No need for forgiveness. It's a great question. The context of women there wasn't to say that all women are evil. I was saying that, you know, it was included as a representative or a symbol of shahwa and desire. And that's why I first preface it between drugs, alcohol, and women. Women being non-mahram women that you should not have relations. I didn't mean, obviously, our mothers or our wives or our sisters or our daughters. I did mean those women that are haram for you. So when you group these three together, and perhaps maybe I should have been more clear about them, I apologize. I should have said non-mahram or even, you know, illegitimate relationship, but hopefully it was clear that it's drugs, alcohol, and women, meaning women that we should not be involved with. Not, of course, our beautiful mothers that we love so much. Thank you. Good question. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the questions. Same format as yesterday. 3 questions here for each. We are sitting in groups, right? Okay. So try to be close to, you okay? As close as possible, because you've discussed this and answered. You have about 5 minutes to answer these questions. So go ahead, put the questions up, and Moulana can read those questions.
All right. So 3. Let's get to our groups, please. Okay. So question. Can you guys hear me? Put it up a little bit. So question number 1 is, why is it important that the child have a sense of belongingness in the home? Number 2 was, what was the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placing us in tribes and nations? Number 3 was, what is one way that parents can make their child feel like they belong in the family?